My name is Skylar, and I'm 32 years old. For the past decade, I've dedicated every waking moment to my career as a senior architect at one of the top firms in Chicago. While my brother Michael was busy finding himself through failed business ventures, and my mother Evelyn was busy shielding him from the consequences of his actions, I was the one grinding. I was the one who missed holidays to meet deadlines. I was the one who stayed late in the office until the cleaners arrived, making sure every line on my blueprints was perfect. My hard work eventually paid off in a way I never dreamed possible. 2 years ago, I finally bought it, my sanctuary, a beautiful modern beach house in Malibu, California. It has floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the Pacific, and the sound of the waves is the only thing that truly quiets my mind after a long week of corporate chaos. I grew up as the responsible one in the family. In my house, that was just code for being the ATM. Whenever Michael's credit card was maxed out because of his reckless spending, or Evelyn needed a little help with the mortgage because she'd overspent on a luxury cruise, I was the first person they called. And like a fool, I always said yes. I thought that by being helpful, I was earning my place in the family. I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I provided enough financial security, they would finally see me as more than just a safety net. I wanted them to be proud of me, not for my paycheck, but for who I was. But as the years passed, the realization sank in. The more I gave, the less they respected me. They didn't see my success as something I had earned through blood, sweat, and tears. They saw it as a family resource that they were entitled to. Michael has always been the golden child. Everything he does is praised, even his spectacular failures. When he lost $50,000 on a ridiculous crypto scam, my mother told me I should be more understanding of his entrepreneurial spirit. Yet, when I got my promotion to senior architect, her first question wasn't about my happiness. It was whether my bonus was big enough to buy Michael a new car. It was exhausting. I lived 3 states away, yet I still felt the suffocating weight of their expectations every single day. My Malibu house was supposed to be my escape from all of that. I rarely told them about it at first, but Evelyn eventually found out. She immediately started calling it the family vacation home, as if her name was on the deed alongside mine. I made the fatal mistake of giving her an emergency key. I told myself it was for peace of mind. What if a pipe burst or there was a fire while I was in Chicago? I never imagined that the emergency would be their own greed and betrayal. I spent my life being the outsider looking in, even though I was the one keeping the lights on for everyone else. Little did I know, they were already planning a way to enjoy my success while making sure I was nowhere near it. It started with a phone call on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of reviewing the structural integrity of a new high-rise project when my phone buzzed on my desk. It was my mother, Evelyn. Usually, her calls meant one of 2 things. Someone was sick or someone needed money. Given that Michael had recently invested in a failing crypto mining startup, I had a strong feeling it was the latter. "Skylar, honey, how is my hardworking daughter?" Her voice chirped through the speaker, dripping with a sweetness that felt artificial. "I'm busy, Mom. What's going on?" I replied, not in the mood for the usual preamble. "Oh, always so direct. I love that about you," she chuckled nervously. Then came the shift in tone, the soft, sympathetic sigh she used right before the big ask. "It's Michael. He's in a bit of a bind. His latest business venture, well, the landlord for his office space is threatening to sue, and he's about $15,000 short. He's devastated, Skylar. He hasn't eaten in 2 days." I closed my eyes and rubbed my temples. $15,000. To them, it was just a number I could click away in a banking app. To me, it was months of overtime and high-stress meetings. "Mom, this is the 3rd time this year. When is he going to learn?" "He's trying, Skylar. He just doesn't have your luck or your brain for business," she pleaded. "Please, just this once. He promises to pay you back by the end of the summer. He's even planning a small family get-together next month to celebrate finally getting back on his feet. We're all going to be there to support him." That caught my attention. A family gathering? A get-together? Where? There was a brief, almost imperceptible pause on the other end. "Oh, just something low-key, out of town. We were talking about it this morning, and Michael actually suggested that we shouldn't bother you with the details." "Why not?" I asked, a slight sting of hurt pricking at my chest. Well, you know how he is, my mother said, her voice now sounding concerned for my well-being. He said you're so stressed with your big firm in Chicago. He told me, Mom, Skylar is a senior architect. She's far too busy and important to waste a weekend on our boring little family noise. He thinks you'd just be bored and frustrated with all the kids running around. And honestly, dear, you do look so tired in your Zoom photos. We thought it would be a kindness to let you have some peace and quiet while we're away. The irony was deafening. They wanted my money to fix Michael's mess, but they didn't want my presence at the celebration of his recovery. I was good enough to be the financier, but too busy and important to be a sister or a daughter. I see, I said, my voice flat. So Michael is worried about my stress levels, but not worried about taking $15,000 of my hard-earned money? Don't be like that, Skylar, she snapped, the sweetness momentarily vanishing. It's family. We help each other. Do you want your brother to end up in court? I sighed, defeated by the familiar weight of obligation. Fine, I'll transfer the money tonight, but tell Michael this is the absolute last time. I mean it, Mom. You're an angel, Skylar, truly. I'll tell everyone how generous you are. Now, go back to your blueprints. We won't disturb your important work anymore. As the line went dead, I stared at the blank screen of my phone. I felt a hollow ache in my chest. I had just handed over a small fortune to a brother who couldn't even be bothered to invite me to a dinner, and a mother who viewed my exclusion as a favor. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I preferred the quiet of my office over their chaotic drama. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was being pushed out of my own family, and I was paying for the privilege. I transferred the $15,000 that night, feeling a bitter mix of resentment and duty. I told myself it was the price of peace. If Michael's problems were solved, maybe the family dynamic would finally stabilize. I went to bed in my Chicago apartment, listening to the wind howl against the skyscrapers, imagining my brother finally taking responsibility. I felt like a hero, just as I always did after bailouts. But a hero is only a hero until the mask of the villain is revealed. The discovery happened 2 days later, quite by accident. I was working from home, trying to clear out some old digital clutter. I pulled an old iPad out of my desk drawer, the one I had originally bought for my mother a year ago. She had returned it a few months later, claiming it was too complicated for her to use. I had thrown it in the drawer and forgotten about it, but as I powered it up to factory reset it, the device automatically connected to my home Wi-Fi. Because my mother had used it for a while, her social media and messaging accounts were still logged in. A barrage of notifications immediately began to flood the screen. Dozens of pings from a group chat app she'd forgotten to sign out of. Usually, I would have just hit delete, but a thumbnail photo caught my eye. It was a picture of a sunset that looked hauntingly familiar. I tapped the notification. The title of the group chat made my heart stop. The Real Family Getaway. My thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. I knew I shouldn't look, but a sickening gut feeling told me that the piece I had just bought for $15,000 was a lie. I scrolled to the most recent messages. There was a photo of Michael. He wasn't in an office dealing with a landlord. He was standing on the deck of my Malibu beach house, holding a bottle of expensive vintage champagne and grinning like he'd won the lottery. The caption under it, written by Michael, read, "The Eagle has landed. This place is even better than the photos. Can't believe Skylar actually pays for this view and never uses it. What a waste. Let the party begin." My mother's reply came a second later. "Careful, Michael. If she finds out we're here, she'll ruin everything with her rules and schedules. Let her stay in gloomy Chicago and work herself to the bone. She loves being the martyr anyway. It's where she belongs." My blood turned to ice. I scrolled up, my eyes stinging as I read through weeks of planning. This wasn't a small get-together to help Michael. It was a full-blown family reunion. Uncles, aunts, cousins, everyone was there. They had organized catering, a professional DJ, and even a cleaning crew. Everyone had been invited, except for me. Then I found the message that shattered what little was left of my heart. It was a screenshot of the bank transfer confirmation I had sent Michael for the $15,000. He had forwarded it to the group with the caption, "The ATM just dispensed the party fund, guys. $15K for the catering and the open bar is officially covered." God, she's so easy to manipulate. All you have to do is mention a landlord or debt, and she starts sweating. Easiest money I ever made. My cousin David had replied, "Doesn't she mind that she's paying for a party she's not even invited to?" Michael's response was cold. "She doesn't know. She thinks she's being the big sister saving the day. Besides, she'd just be a buzzkill. She doesn't know how to have fun. We're doing her a favor by keeping her out of it." I sat on my sofa, the iPad glowing in my dark living room, feeling like a complete fool. They were in my house. They were sleeping in my bed, drinking from my glasses, and laughing at my expense. Literally. They hadn't used my emergency key for a burst pipe. They had used it to break into my life and steal the one thing I had built for myself. I looked at a photo Michael posted of his kids jumping on my Italian leather sofa with their shoes on. The sofa I had saved up for 6 months to buy. My mother had commented, "Don't worry about the mess, kids. Skylar will pay for the cleaners once we leave. It's the least she can do for the family." The betrayal wasn't just the money. It was the calculated, cruel mockery of my love for them. I realized that as long as I kept playing the role of the provider, they would keep playing the role of the parasites. I was done being the ATM. If they wanted a real family getaway, I was about to give them an experience they would never forget. I sat there in the heavy silence of my apartment, the only light coming from the iPad screen that had just shattered my world. It's funny how a few lines of text can rewrite 30 years of history in an instant. I wasn't Skylar, the daughter. I wasn't Skylar, the sister. I was just an account number with a heartbeat. My stomach twisted into a knot as I reread Michael's message about the party fund. That money, the $15,000 I had sacrificed my own savings for, was supposed to keep him out of legal trouble. Instead, it was paying for the expensive catering and the open bar they were enjoying while standing on my deck, looking at my ocean view. The betrayal tasted like ash in my mouth. For years, I had been the one to stay late at the firm, the one to save every penny, and the one to say yes whenever they were in a bind. I remembered missing my best friend's wedding 2 years ago because Michael had a financial crisis I felt obligated to fund. I remembered working through 3 consecutive Christmases to ensure my mother could have the comfortable life she always claimed she deserved. I thought I was building a bridge back to them, showing them my worth through my generosity. But looking at those photos of them in my Malibu home, laughing and mocking me, I realized I hadn't been building a bridge at all. I had been building a palace for people who wouldn't even let me through the front door. A strange thing happens when you hit rock bottom emotionally. You stop being sad, and you start being very, very calm. The tears that had been pricking my eyes just dried up. I didn't want to call my mother and scream. I didn't want to text Michael and demand my money back. I knew exactly what would happen if I did. They would lie, gaslight me, and tell me I was being dramatic or sensitive, just like they always did. No, this situation required something more than words. It required a reality check that no amount of family guilt or manipulation could wiggle out of. I opened my laptop and started making strategic calls. First, to my lawyer. "Confirm for me," I said, my voice eerily steady, "that the deed to the Malibu property is solely in my name and that no one else has residency rights." He confirmed it within minutes. "And the emergency key I gave my mother, does that grant legal permission for a party or long-term stay?" "Absolutely not," he replied. Next, I called the local police precinct in Malibu. I explained that I was the owner of a high-end property and that I had received evidence that several individuals had gained unauthorized entry and were currently hosting a large-scale event without my permission. I told them I was flying in immediately and would meet them at the property to file an official trespassing report and oversee an eviction. I felt a cold, sharp sense of purpose. I packed a small bag, just the essentials. I wasn't the ATM anymore. I was the homeowner. And in less than 24 hours, the real family getaway was going to come to a very screeching, very legal halt. I wasn't just taking my house back, I was taking my dignity back. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, then I would show them exactly how a stranger protects their property from intruders. Before we dive into the intense confrontation at the beach house, where everything finally comes to a head, I want to ask you a quick favor. If you're finding this story of betrayal and standing your ground relatable, please consider hitting that subscribe button right now. Your support truly means the world to us and helps this channel grow so we can keep bringing you these powerful stories of justice and self-respect. Don't forget to give this video a like if you think Skylar is doing the right thing. Now, let's see what happened when the police arrived and justice was served. The flight from Chicago to LAX was the longest 4 hours of my life. Every minute felt like an eternity as I sat in that cramped seat, my mind replaying the messages I had read on the iPad. The betrayal wasn't just a wound. It was a fire that kept me warm while the rest of the world felt cold. When I landed, the Malibu air was salty and warm, a mocking contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I took an Uber straight to my property. As we turned onto the Pacific Coast Highway, my heart began to thud against my ribs. Not with fear, but with a cold, sharp anticipation. I told the driver to pull over a block away from my house. 2 police cruisers were already parked there, just as I had arranged. Officers Miller and Rodriguez stepped out, their faces neutral but professional. I showed them my ID and the digital deed to the house. "Ms. Sterling," Officer Miller said, "we've observed the noise and the large gathering. You're certain you didn't authorize this?" "I'm certain," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "They used a key given for emergencies to break in and host an event. I want them out, now." As we walked toward my house, I could hear the music. It was loud, thumping bass that vibrated through the pavement, the sound of my hard-earned money being thrown away. Cars were lined up along my driveway, blocking the entrance. I saw Michael's SUV parked right in the front, looking like he owned the place. I didn't hesitate. I walked up to my front door and used my key. The moment the door swung open, the smell of expensive seafood and expensive wine hit me. My living room, which I had carefully designed to be a place of peace, was a chaotic mess. People I hadn't seen in years, distant cousins, Michael's shady business associates, were everywhere. Some were lounging on my Italian leather sofa with their shoes on, just like in the photos. Michael was standing by a makeshift bar, holding a bottle of champagne and laughing at a joke. My mother, Evelyn, was standing near the balcony, wearing a new silk dress that I'm sure my loan had paid for. The music was so loud that no one noticed me at first. It was only when Officer Miller tapped his baton against the doorframe that the room began to fall silent. One by one, heads turned. The laughter died down, replaced by a confused, heavy silence. Michael's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. His face went from a grin to a mask of pure terror in 3 seconds. "Skylar?" he stammered, the champagne bottle nearly slipping from his hand. What are you doing here? You said you had a big meeting in Chicago." I walked into the center of the room, the 2 officers flanking me like shadows of justice. "The meeting was canceled, Michael. I decided to come home and see what my $15,000 bought me. I didn't realize I was funding a festival for people who weren't even invited to my life." My mother pushed through the crowd, her face pale. "Skylar, honey, let's not make a scene in front of the guests. We were going to tell you. We wanted it to be a surprise." "A surprise?" I laughed, and the sound was sharp and cold, cutting through her lies like a knife. "A surprise is a birthday card, Mom. This is a home invasion. You took my money, you took my house, and you laughed about how easy I am to manipulate in your secret group chat. Did you think I'd never find out?" The room gasped. I could see my cousins looking at each other, realizing they were part of something illegal. "Officers," I said, not looking away from my mother's trembling face, "these people are trespassing on my private property. I want everyone who is not on the deed to leave immediately. If they refuse, I want them removed forcibly." Officer Miller stepped forward. "All right, everyone, the party is over. You have 10 minutes to gather your things and exit the premises. If you're still here after 10 minutes, you will be cited for trespassing and taken into custody." The panic that followed was satisfying. People started scrambling, grabbing their coats and bags, avoiding my gaze as they hurried toward the door. Michael tried to step toward me, his face turning red with a mix of anger and desperation. "You can't do this, Skylar. It's family. Mom has a key. She gave us permission." "Mom doesn't own this house, Michael." "I do," I shot back. "And that key was for a burst pipe, not for your ego." You're not a brother today, you're just a thief who got caught. Evelyn started to cry, those practiced, manipulative tears I had seen 1,000 times. How could you do this to your own mother? Calling the police on us? We have nowhere to go tonight. You have Michael's office, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that felt like ice. Or maybe the landlord you lied about can give you a room. Get out of my house, Evelyn, before I decide to press charges for the stolen funds, too. As the last of the guests shuffled out under the watchful eyes of the police, the house felt suddenly, hauntingly empty. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the ocean waves outside, waves that finally belonged to me again. The house was quiet now, but it was the kind of silence that rings in your ears. The front door had finally stopped swinging as the last of the confused and embarrassed cousins fled into the night. But inside, the air was still thick with the stench of betrayal and expensive catering. I stood by the kitchen island, my hands gripping the marble edge so hard my knuckles were white. Michael was pacing the living room like a caged animal, his face a deep, ugly shade of red. Evelyn was slumped on the sofa, my sofa, clutching a silk throw pillow as if it were a shield. I hope you're happy, Skylar, Michael finally exploded, turning to face me. You just humiliated us in front of everyone. Our cousins, my business associates, the neighbors. Do you have any idea what this does to my reputation? You treated us like common criminals in front of the whole world. Your reputation? I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. Michael, you are a criminal. You lied about a $15,000 debt to scam me, and then you broke into my home. The only reason you aren't in handcuffs right now is because I'm giving you 5 minutes to walk out that door. Don't talk to me about reputation when you've spent the last 3 hours laughing at me behind my back. Evelyn looked up then, her eyes swimming in those practiced, manipulative tears I had seen since I was a child. Skylar, how can you be so cold, so heartless? We are your family. Yes, maybe we shouldn't have kept the party a secret, but we only did it because we knew how stressed you get. We wanted to handle everything so you could just be proud of us for once. Be proud of you for stealing from me? I countered, stepping toward her. I read the messages, Mom. I saw the ATM comments. I saw how you told everyone I'd pay for the cleaners because I love being the martyr. You didn't leave me out to save me from stress. You left me out because you wanted my life without having to deal with me. You wanted the house, the view, and the luxury, but you didn't want the person who actually worked for it. You've always been like this, Evelyn sobbed, covering her face with her hands. Ever since you started making that big city money, you've looked down on us. You think you're better than us just because you have a deed and a fancy title. I raised you to be a good daughter, to share what you have with those who have less. This isn't how a real family acts. A real family doesn't call the police on their own mother. A real family doesn't use their daughter's emergency key to throw a secret party with her stolen money, I shot back. The guilt trips didn't work anymore. The selfish labels didn't stick. I saw them for exactly what they were. Parasites who were angry that the host had finally grown a spine. Michael grabbed his jacket from the chair, his eyes narrow and full of venom. Fine, keep your house, Skylar. Keep your money and your empty rooms. You're going to be very successful and very, very alone. Don't come crying to us when you realize that your bank account can't hug you back. I'd rather be alone in a house I earned, I said firmly, than surrounded by people who only love me for what they can take from me. Now get out, both of you. I watched from the balcony as Michael's SUV pulled out of the driveway, his tires screeching against the asphalt, a final, desperate tantrum in the dark. My mother was in the passenger seat, her face hidden behind her hands. I didn't feel the surge of triumph I had once expected. Instead, I felt a profound, quiet sense of relief, like a heavy, suffocating coat I'd been wearing for 30 years had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The sun had long set over the Pacific, and the moon was now casting a silver glow over the waves. It was the same view they had tried to steal from me, but now the air felt different. It was finally, truly mine. The first thing I did after the police left was call a 24-hour locksmith. As I stood there in the silence, watching him replace the cylinders in every single door, I felt each click of the new keys as a definitive step toward my own freedom. I spent the rest of the night cleaning. It was a ritual of reclamation. I wiped away the physical traces of people who didn't respect me and scrubbed the stains from a party I was never meant to attend. I threw away the half-empty bottles of expensive wine my own hard-earned money had bought and stripped the guest beds they had so casually occupied. By the time the early morning light began to creep over the horizon, the house smelled of lemon and salt air again. It finally felt like a sanctuary, not a scene of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, the flying monkeys arrived. Distant relatives sent concerned messages, echoing my mother's narrative that I was being cruel and unforgiving. I didn't engage. I didn't explain myself. I realized that explaining your boundaries to people who profit from breaking them is a complete waste of breath. I eventually decided to list the beach house as a high-end vacation rental. It was a pragmatic business decision, a way to turn a place of pain into a source of income that would fund my own future, not my brother's next disaster. I've learned a hard lesson that many of you might recognize. Blood makes you related, but loyalty, honesty, and respect are what actually make you family. Being the responsible one in your family is a noble thing, but it doesn't mean you have to be a doormat for people who don't value you. It took losing my family to finally find my own worth, and that's a trade I'd make again in a heartbeat. I'm no longer Skylar the ATM. I'm Skylar, the woman who finally chose herself. And that, more than any house or bank balance, is the greatest project I've ever built.